The CEOs of 5 major social media platforms, Meta, TikTok, Snap, Discord, and X, testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee on Wednesday. Their testimony was regarding child exploitation and the harms that their respective platforms yield to teenagers and children. And the various situations that were sort of discussed involved drug deals on these social media apps, suicides, bullying, sexual exploitation, and things of the like. The hearing was really to help increase support for federal legislation, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a minute. But let's first walk through some of the highlights, if you will, of the testimony. And I'm not going to go through every single thing that happened at the hearing, otherwise we would be here for 6 hours. I do have the testimony linked for you if you're interested in watching it. But again, I'm just going to kind of touch on the highlights. So Zuckerberg and Chu, the CEOs of Meta and TikTok respectively, faced most of the brunt of the criticism. In one of the more heated exchanges, Senator Josh Hawley repeatedly asked Zuckerberg about Meta's own internal research that was brought to light by a whistleblower and started this dialogue by questioning Zuckerberg about his opening statement. And that opening statement said in part, quote, "Mental health is a complex issue, and the existing body of scientific work has not shown a causal link between using social media and young people having worse mental health outcomes," end quote. Hawley then presented a quote from Meta's own internal study that said, quote, "We, meaning Meta, make body image issues worse for 1 in 3 teen girls," end quote. And another study that read, quote, "Teens blame Instagram for increases in the rate of anxiety and depression," end quote. So Hawley interpreted these studies to mean that teenagers are saying Instagram is making their lives worse, whereas Zuckerberg disagreed, saying that that's not what those findings show and that Hawley's interpretation is a mischaracterization. The two argued for a minute over whether Hawley's interpretation was true or not, and then Hawley moved on to sexual exploitation statistics. Specifically, Hawley cited 2 statistics from a Meta whistleblower who previously testified before Congress that 37% of Instagram users between the ages of 13 and 15 years old had encountered nudity on the platform in that prior 7-day period. In the same 7-day period, 24% of Instagram users in that same age range received unwanted sexual advances. And again, in that same 7-day period, 17% of users aged 13 to 15 had encountered self-harm content. Now, those statistics were sent to Zuckerberg by this whistleblower, which led to Hawley asking Zuckerberg, "Who did you fire for this when this came to your attention?" And Zuckerberg responded, "We studied this because we want to improve our services." Hawley cut him off, asked Zuckerberg 3 more times who got fired, and Zuckerberg finally said he wouldn't answer that he didn't find it appropriate to talk about HR decisions, but that it's Meta's job to constantly improve their tools based on these studies and findings. Afterwards, Hawley asked Zuckerberg if he wanted to apologize to the parents who have lost children who were sitting in the room with them. Zuckerberg then turned around to the parents and said, quote, "I am sorry for everything you have been through. No one should go through the things that your families have suffered, and this is why we invest so much, and we are going to continue doing industry-wide efforts to make sure no one has to go through the things that your families have had to suffer," end quote. Both Hawley and Senator Lindsey Graham accused Zuckerberg of running a platform that is killing both children and teenagers, with Graham telling Zuckerberg that he had blood on his hands. TikTok's CEO, Chu, he faced questions about the company's ties to China. This is something that we've seen before. So perhaps you remember the last time that Chu testified to Congress, he had talked about Project Texas. Project Texas was essentially an effort by TikTok to keep all of the US data in the US. And this is because lawmakers were threatening to ban TikTok nationwide. Well, recently on Tuesday, the Wall Street Journal published this report that said workers with Project X have sometimes been instructed to share data with other parts of the TikTok company or with ByteDance, which is the Chinese parent company. So the senators questioned Chu about this Wall Street Journal report, to which Chu responded that multiple aspects of that article were inaccurate and stated again that TikTok has never shared any user data with the Chinese government. So again, Zuckerberg and Chu faced, the majority of the heat. The other CEOs also faced questions regarding the same issues, But really, the lawmakers were essentially trying to get down to the bottom of what sort of tools these platforms have implemented to solve the ongoing problems, and more so, why these platforms haven't done enough to protect teenagers and children given their resources, their immense amount of resources. And by getting these CEOs to testify and illustrate that not enough is being done or has been done, the lawmakers are hoping that they can garner support for federal legislation that is intended to regulate these platforms and how they manage online safety, and hopefully solve a lot of these issues we're seeing with teenagers and children.